tonight we are fortunate to have Hal Ottaway as our presenter. And Hal is currently the vice president of the Wichita Postcard Club. He's also one of the founders of the Wichita Postcard Club. And some of you already know Hal from a prior meetings. But one thing about Hal you'll notice is that he always has a big smile on his face and he's a happy guy. And there's a reason for that, and I'm going to reveal it. See, when Hal was a young kid growing up, he was one of the luckiest kids in the whole entire country. And the reason is that his family owned a amusement park. So imagine that. It's sort of like having an amusement park in your backyard. Well, that smile from those early days stuck, and you can't get rid of it. So that's why Hal's always smiling. Hal also, Hal and a couple friends put together a book about postcards of Wichita back in the 70s. And that's really the catalyst that got the Postcard Club started. It was after that book came out. And their club started officially in 1977, which is just about 2 years after our club. We started in 1975. So tonight, Hal's going to talk about these Red Devil postcards, which probably has you wondering just what the heck they are. So now I'm going to turn over to Hal, and we're going to find out.
Thank you for inviting me, and I'm glad to be here. Some of this material will be new, and some you know about, but just think back to real photo postcards, and the time period was when they didn't really have radios, or certainly not televisions, but radios and telephones and just lots of things that we take for granted today, ways of communicating with other people. The RFD had come in 1896 and was slowly working its way across the country, allowing people to get rural free delivery of their mail. And this was a big deal. It used to be that the mail, you had to go to the mail center or the post office to pick it up. And a lot of times rural farm families went once a month or maybe every week at the most. In any case, it was an advance in communicating with other people. Well, postcards that came along during this time were a way to communicate. And in big cities, we're told, especially in the East and the West Coast, they had deliveries more than once a day. 2 and 3 times a day, you could get a postcard or other mail too. But the postcards, if you turn them over, they'll say something about, we'll see you tomorrow, or maybe this evening at so-and-so a time and place. And they could pretty well count on that being delivered and that message being raised. In any case, real photo postcards are what we talk about and look for a lot today. When I started out collecting in the 50s and the 1960s, the big deal was greeting cards. And the more fluff and fury and embossing and everything, the better. The antique dealers were the ones that had them usually, at least in this part of the country in Kansas. We didn't have the big flea markets like you do back east, but or maybe on the West Coast too. But anyway, things happened and progressed, and real photo postcards and being able to look at the image and realize that that is capturing a part of life. It's a snapshot of what was going on, what you were wearing, where you were going, how you were being transported, and events and fairs and everything. All of that were on postcards. Well, I won't go into a whole lot more detail on that, depending on my my participants and the people that are here to hear. But in any case, the looking at a box of postcards or looking at an album a dealer will have, just every once in a while, you would notice something in an album full of, say, black and white cards. You might notice some colors, and blue was one of those. First image, please, Alan. This is one of my favorite personal blue cards, and they're called cyanotype, and that's for the word blue, cyan, and let's see, we'll get that here in a minute. But anyway, this was a card that was sent out of Columbus, Kansas, by this fellow that must have been named Richard or Dick, and probably sent to his girlfriend, since that's what, or a lady friend, we'll say. It was advertised on the back. But can you imagine his long, tall neck and that big, wide collar on there? But he looks pretty snappy. Might have been a school teacher. He might have been a minister. You just don't know. Certainly very professional, even with the tie, the stick pin in his tie. Very foxy with the pocket handkerchief and everything. This is an example of this blue postcard. Let me just read briefly, nothing too. The cyanotype is a photograph produced using paper coated with light sensitive iron. Most photo paper was covered with silver. Had to be exposed in bright sunlight to bring out the image. No darkroom was required, and these were popular with amateurs who wished to print their own postcards. And that's one thing I wanted to point out, was that amateurs were able to read a magazine or join a club or buy a book, and Kodak there in Rochester, New York, were a big factor in providing enthusiasm and how-to literature and so forth to people, amateurs included, how to take pictures and how to work with them. And this was just one of the early results of that. Next slide, please. Here's a little bit of New York here. It shows a birch bark canoe, and I think Michael or Rick told me yesterday that this was called portaging this canoe. Put it on his back or his shoulders in some way. But for us in Kansas, something made of birch bark. We don't have birch trees so much in Kansas. We're more cottonwood and oaks. But in any case, this is pretty neat for us because we're able to look at this and see how the birch bark itself was fit around this frame, and then with some kind of adhesive or sewing or so forth, was able to make this canoe that would float in water and not sink. But this is an example. It's unidentified, wasn't postally used or anything. But at the bottom, it does say Birch Canoe, 8th Lake. And one of the fellows there looked up and found where 8th Lake is. It's close to Inlet, New York. So this is going right back to your part of the woods. And a cool card, and I'm glad that it was identified. It helps to give some flavor to it. Next card, please. This is a double image. It's especially neat because it shows an ice storm, and it's a disaster for sure. But this ice is formed on all of these telephone lines. And if you get up close, you can really see how many there were, many, each one covered in water, frozen water and ice. And that brought down the lines. It must have been a pain in the neck for a while. But this just shows how the blue is nice to show the contrast and it's ideal for an ice storm or a snowstorm because you really do see the that. Otherwise, white on white, it wouldn't have been a standout very well. But this, you see, the blue cards, they give a feeling of cold and winter. That's an ideal aspect of using the cyanotype cards. I think we out here we don't see these too much, but they're worthwhile. And I've always found that if you have two or three with interesting images and put them away and file, and then keep looking, keep collecting, and adding one maybe once or twice a year, some kind of a scene or a view that strikes a note with you, then after a while you can form a very interesting collection of cyanotypes or anything else. Now, I know that you're all wondering, well, what was that old boy talking about when he named this whole thing about a Red Devil postcard? Well, I'm here to tell you. I'm here to show. And Red Devil postcards, I couldn't find that in any book. I can't find anything about these red cards, so I named it Red Devil Postcards, and I hope you like it. It'll help you remember, and you're going to go to a show, or you're going to go home, or you're going to go to your box of cards and pick out two or three of these cards, and you'll say, yeah, that's what he was talking about, for sure. Well, to me, the Red Devil Postcards, sure, they're red. And that means that they probably were dipped in a red dye or some kind of solution where it's red on the front, and if you turn the postcard on the other side, it's pink or red there. Maybe it's redder on the image side. But that's one thing that I look for. You know, we look for the blue cards. Well, you can do the same. The red ones kind of jump out at you too. They're not rare, but they seem to be kind of uncommon. Another aspect, that red was the first one. There are 3 points that I look at. And the second one is that they often, and you're going to see this evening, examples where fire is a part of this. The red fire, the fireplace, and we're going to talk about studios, photography studios that encouraged and led to these kinds of cards. And then the number 3 part, 1 was fire or red, 2 was fire, and 3 is I think they're kind of mysterious. And I'll show you a bunch, and you're going to, I hope, come along and see that same kind of, or have that same kind of feeling as I have. But we look forward to showing you Red Devil postcards. Next view, please. This is one of my very favorites. Of course, being out here in Kansas, we have an affinity sometime for cowboys. But this one you see is a red card. It's a black and white image that has been dipped in red dye of some sort, and it's turned red. And you turn it over, and it is kind of pink on the back as well. But this guy, look, it's red, and obviously something. He's reading this, and my imagination may get a little bit overblown, but I hope you'll bear with me. I think he may very well be reading a letter or some kind of paperwork in front of a campfire. What do you think? A cowboy, well, of course, he could be in front of a fireplace too, but I think I kind of like that campfire business. And it's kind of mysterious because you look at him, and I think he kind of looks like a drugstore cowboy. And by that, I mean a guy that's gone to a photo studio, and he's looked in a box, and he pops on a hat, and then he gets a kerchief around his neck. And look, he has woolly chaps on his legs. Well, you tie those on yourself, or wrap them around you and belt them on. And those woolly chaps would have protected the legs from if you were on a horse and if you were going through cactus and brush and so forth. they were meant to give protection, but also it's part of this image that the photographer may have had in his bag of tricks here to get you to come on in and dress up a little bit. You know, you've seen photographers have been doing that forever. And two, look there between his legs, that's where his 6-shooter is. Now, no cowboy would have it there in front be like that. He would have it on his hip where you'd have a fast draw and so forth. Anyway, this is one of my favorite cards. It's a Red Devil card for sure. And next image, please. Now, this is one that I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier. This is, I think, pretty mysterious. And you think, how did they take this picture? Well, for one thing, the fella is sitting in front of a fireplace, a full figure, and it looks to me like they may have pointed the camera to a peephole. What do you think? A peephole, or maybe they crouched down and took that picture through even a keyhole in the door. It's different, it's unusual, and that's what collectors like, and it's why you buy the darn thing to begin with. It's different and unusual, and you know, you can make up some kind of a story about it perhaps too. When you get ready to part with it, somebody will say, well, then I was kind of thinking about that one. But this, I think, is one we're going to see a whole series of these sitting in front of a fireplace. And I think some, you'll agree, are probably in a photo studio. Some may be in a real fireplace, and the photographer or the mother, father, son, anybody, amateur, took a snap of the family in front of their fireplace, perhaps two. We'll see. The next image, please. This is one that you notice the edges, all 4 edges, they look like they're kind of crimped. It's like it has a frame around it. Well, I'm going to show this. I'm going to make a note of this right now, and this kind of a circular or half moon-like fireplace, and excuse me, I think this is a studio fireplace for sure, and nothing about it with real fire crackling. But I'm going to show it to you in a little bit. On the back of this one, it says it's from Clayton's Studio in Lee's Summit, Missouri. That's up close to Kansas City, I think. Also note the press paper frame. The next image, please. This is from the Electric Photo Studio in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It said postcards were a specialty. Now, some of real photo cards, you know, on the backs, they'll be showing, or they'll have an identity there to a studio or to a postcard man who was making them for a wider audience. And so you would turn it over and say, ooh, they did that in Rochester or something. I'll have to go there the next time I go. Look at this fireplace and look at that fire. I think that's definitely a studio. That does not look like real flames in there. It looks like something maybe cut out with cardboard, and they have, you know, the edges. I think that's, when you get up close and look there, I think that's a kind of a faux or faux fire in the fireplace. But even a moon may be up there and above the lady's head. I'm not sure. It could be another clock face too. But this is from that studio in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Next card, please. This one I'm showing both sides because this, I think, is in the in a studio, and it says on the back, and this is kind of fun, it's in the Moonlight Postcard Studio here on East Douglas in Wichita, Kansas, my hometown. So this dude is there all dressed up, and he's pretending like he's warming by the fire, but they took his picture. Look at those foxy shoes he has on, and even a little heel on him. Must have been kind of on the short side, so he wanted to give himself a lift. In any case, this card was washed with the red, the fire, and all of that, all of the excitement of uh, of this Red Devil postcard. Let's go to the next one, please. This I look at and I've decided there may be law students, or maybe they're fraternity brothers, or maybe it's just a big family getting together at a at a do. But this one is marked on the back. It's by the Kriegel Photo Parlors in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Apparently, they had a studio in each of those Twin City towns. Next one, please. This very much so by the fireplace. It's a card, and it's from marked on the back, the Firelight Studio in Louisville, New York. This was a gift from Brian Jones in Branson, Missouri, one of my buddies, and comes to the show, and he knew that I had an affinity for these, and so he put that in an envelope and gave it to me. But it was fun to have, and I'm glad to recognize Brian at this time. But this is a mother and daughter, or maybe a daughter and a granddaughter, who knows, but they're looking at a book and pretending like they're warming by the fire as well. The next image, please. This one is what I say, a pensive portrait of a gentleman sitting in front of a fireplace. And this is from the Jenkins Arcade Palace Studio in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we don't see any fire jumping up, but it's he's by the fireplace, and he's thinking deep thoughts, I think, don't you? Next one, please. This is the lady with a high-necked blouse, and she's in front of maybe a studio fireplace. I think this is one of those that the flames are also cut out of paper or cardboard. They really look fake to me, but it looks like a roaring fire going there, and she's wanting everybody to see a little bit of artwork or other family pictures and so forth on the fireplace mantle. Next one, please. I think that maybe this is the mother with their two almost grown children, all posed in front of this warming fireplace. This is from the Hofstetter Studio in Portland, Oregon. They have some kind of a fur or a pelt on the ground or in the floor, just in the fireplace, and in their Sunday best and looks all dressed up and with an open book, and I don't know how much reading they could do and by the light of the fireplace, but that's what they had a lot of times. Next one, please. This is a man checking over paperwork in front of a studio fireplace, and remember I told you about the second or third card was at the Clayton Studio in Lee's Summit, Missouri. This one also has the crimped edges on the four edges of the postcard. And on the back of this, there's additional advertising. And let me read you what it says on the back. Note on the reverse, it says that 12 duplicates of this photograph will be sent to anyone sending this picture, which will be returned, and 55 cents in stamps to Clayton Studio in Lee's Summit, Missouri. And so there you go. You see his foot is almost, it's against this, the fake part of the fireplace itself, and it's not going anywhere. It's right there. But it's fun to have these two cards from the Lee's Summit and to be able to know about how you could get additional copies 12 of them back for the 55 cents, and they wanted to be paid in stamps. The next one, please. This, I think, is one of those fun cards that's fun to me because it was sent to me by Debbie and Ken Wilson in Dripping Springs, Texas. Ken gave a program for you 2 or 3 months ago, but this is one that they found at a flea market in Paris, France, and it was red. And so Debbie and Ken thought of Hal, and they popped it in an envelope. And I was so surprised to open this envelope from France and find a red postcard. I think this lady she's not in front of a fireplace, but to add to the allure and the lure of the picture, I think she may be an actress, or maybe she's a singer, and she's on some sort of a stage riser, and maybe over kind of a fake stream or creek or something. But I think she's a performer, don't you? That's what I've decided. But in any case, it's fun, and to know that they were doing some of these red cards in France too. And note that they have the stamp on the front. That was very common in France and Austria, Netherlands, and so forth, to lick the stamp, and the address and everything was on the other side. So that's what they did. Next one, please. Now, you see, we had all of that fire, and we had all the mystery, and we had all the heat and the red and everything. Well, those were kind of a grouping of fireplace, or that, if you include my cowboy at the beginning, a campfire. I still like that. But here we go for a disaster, something that happened at night. And so you had the red flames jumping up and smoke, and the sounds that would have gone with it, and maybe some screams and yells, and put water here or something. This is the St. James Hotel in Oxford, New York. And I think that Rick or Michael looked that up, and Oxford might have been in the Adirondacks. Is that right? I think so. In any case, it's a horrible fire that was not unusual in any community. Lots of dwellings built of wood, very flammable. People had candles, and they had lamps that if the fuel was spilled and the fire lapped, it was easy to have a fire in early day America. And this just kind of documents it. But this business of taking this black and white photograph and dipping it in the red gives it this a lot more emphasis and a lot more fear, really. Shows the scariness of it to the not only the sender but the receiver too. But you can imagine receiving this card and look, wow, and showing that around at school, or just leaving it there at home for other visitors to see. It was really something. Next one, please. This is kind of this more of the same thing. This is the Whitley Opera House, barber shop, a grocery store, and a meat market that were totally destroyed in Emporia, Kansas, just northeast of Wichita here, in mid-June 1913. It just wiped out a big part of Emporia, Kansas. And without the red to it, it just wouldn't be nearly as interesting or dramatic as this is. But I think that there were photography studios, and they kind of had this idea about the redness, and it was a good selling point. And I bet anything that the next day that these postcards with the redness to them, and the fire and the heat and the mystery and so forth, I think they all added to the sales for that this and other postcards. I've not seen any other from Emporia, but this is a good example. Of course, it wouldn't have gone on and on forever. So somebody was there, took the picture, and then processed it. Next one, please. This is a good example. It kind of reminds me of the keyhole or the through the peephole even. But this, I'm not quite sure how they took this picture. But what this is the Missouri State Capitol burning in St. Joseph, Missouri. And that's where the Capitol is. And I've looked up, and the big fire was on February 5, 1911. And it's when it was by lightning. And the fire spread through the wooden supports in the dome and the roof. And so this, also is enhanced by the red wash that it received, and would certainly have added to sales and interest about this horrible thing that happened. They, of course, rebuilt the Capitol and has beautiful paintings inside on the dome all around. In fact, some New Mexico and Taos artists were commissioned to come and do sections of that dome around. I know because my mother and father-in-law had a photographer go in and take pictures of that artwork, and we still have that. But this was a disaster for sure in St. Joseph, Missouri in 1911. Next one, please. Now this is the Union Pacific, Union Pacific Hotel and Depot in North Platte, Nebraska. It burned, as you can see, November 17th in 1915. The Brick Studio took the photograph. They're mentioned over here on the left, lower left corner. And this 3-story building went up in quickly. Now this was in 1915, and then along came World War I, and they had to rebuild it soon thereafter. But in World War II, in 1941, I've read the story, and maybe you have too, about the ladies and the women of the area. They got together and they made sandwiches and they had little Christmas gifts and so forth. They had heard that the Nebraska National Guard was going to be coming through on a night train. This was in 1941 and December 17th, I think, just 10 days after Pearl Harbor. And the train arrived. So these ladies got together all this fruit, magazines, and so forth, and took it, and they wanted to give them to their boys. Well, they got there, and the train arrived, and it wasn't the National Guard. These were all guys from Kansas who were off to war training and to war. And so there was one woman that stood forward. She said, well, I'm not taking all this back home. And so they all just went to the train and started passing out the gifts and passing out the food. And it was, you can imagine, an enormous hit with those guys. These are our boys too. And, they're from Kansas, and we want to support them and make them feel good about what they're doing for their country. And so, as the story goes, the next morning there was a good article in the North Platte newspaper telling about this and encouraging other people, let's get together, let's form this canteen in the North Platte Depot. And they did. And there was a wonderful book, Once Upon a Town, by Bob Greene, that you can buy in paperback or hardback. There was a movie, there's a video, and so forth. But just think about it. Just type in North Platte, Nebraska canteen, and you'll really read a lot, and makes you feel good about, for years, all through the war, these ladies continued, and every day They were there handing out food, baking cakes, cupcakes. Now, sugar, there were lots of things that they were using that were rationed. And so, they were giving all the time of their effort. Even the president, I think he sent $1 or $2 a check or something to help with the cause. But the word got around, and the men spoke highly of North Platte, Nebraska, and tears would come to their eyes years later when they would see anything in the paper about North Platte. Anyway, that's a little side story that I'm famous for. Let's go on to the next image, please. This is the burning of Mr. Fike's livery barn during the night, obviously, of August 14th in 1910. It was taken by Young Studio, all that's at the lower edge, in Oberlin, Kansas. That's out western Kansas. You can see how they were able to pull out a buggy here in the right. Now, this I don't think was taken through any keyhole. I think it was nighttime, and they just took a picture of all of what was going on in front of them. And then to enhance it, this smart man with the photo studio did the developing and the printing, and then gave it a bath of this red dye. And so that helped to sell them the next day for sure. Next one, please. This is a card that would be a yawner or very boring if it didn't have this red dye, this red enhancement. It's the steel mills in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania by night. But you can see that it's reflecting on the river, which is the Allegheny River. I looked that up. That's what's reflecting. And then the sky, it's cloudy, and all of this redness of the pollution, really, and the steel mill, everything up in the sky. It's a great picture that shows industry and shows a lot of employment and labor unions. All of these things is captured in a picture like this and greatly enhanced with the red dye. Next one, please. Now here we go. This is a World War I scene, and that went on. We joined the war in 1917, but it had been going on for the Germans and the French and the Belgians and the Europeans since 1914, I think. In any case, says the bombardment of Antwerp by the Germans. And you can see the bombs bursting in air over here on the right. And then up in the left, in that left top corner, you see the undercarriage of a dirigible or a Zeppelin. And I've did a little looking, and they're all, it could be, Hindenburg was one of the rulers and inventors and so forth during that time. And if it was powered and if it was steerable, then it was a dirigible. So all of those words kind of have a similar meaning and so forth. But anyway, that is certainly enhanced with the red coloring too. It's a printed card. It's not a real photo, but I just showed it because it's another example of what was just made far more important than it would have been if it would have been just in black and white. Next one, please. Now we're getting toward the end. Don't worry. I wanted to show just a few hand-tinted cards. And this lady, if you look at her closely, she has lots of coloring on her flesh and on her face. And up here she has beautiful brown hair. All of that appears to have been done by me anyway. Appears to have been done by someone with skill in doing makeup and doing the hair and so forth, but somebody of less skill may have had the paintbrush that made the red hat and the big red tie in front. I don't know. But she's happy, and it's just another part. We're no longer looking at Red Devil postcards, but we're looking at hand tinted, just a few. This one next, please. Now here's a real photo postcard. Look at all of these men in their suits, of course. That's the way most men left home and spent the day. But it's a disaster in the daytime. It's in McPherson, Kansas, just north of Wichita. But this fire is in the roof part of the McPherson Ice Manufacturing Company. And all of these people are looking there. Well, don't you know, when this card and picture was made by that local photographer, then when he had those printed, or printed them himself, I'm sure, and then just enhanced this a little bit with some brush strokes of red to show the fire, I bet most every one of those people bought one or two or three of these postcards to show or to save or to send to somebody, some friend, some neighbor who missed it and didn't see it. But all of those people would have been potential customers. It's just a great example of, again, of the photographer enhancing just a little bit, taking a little bit more time, but really producing a product that was unique. It was neat. Next one, please. Now I have three of the last cards. They're all hand tinted. They're all from the Hawaii National Park, Kilauea Volcano in Hawaii. And you know that just a couple years ago, maybe last year, the volcanoes were belching and erupting with lava, and molten lava would go through little villages or towns or go over highways, and by gravity feed it would eventually get to the edge of the islands and go into the sea. Well, this is what they've done here. This would have been enhanced just a little bit, but carefully. You can see that they didn't make the lady's white skirt over here on the right. They didn't paint it red, but they took some care in adding the redness, tinting this real photo postcard. Next one, please. There are three of this Hawaii National Park, and it's bubbling and it's dripping in there, and or rushing in there and causing a splash, but you can see that. Okay, next one, please. And there you have more of this red, or this molten lava enhanced with the red paintbrush and giving it a feeling. But all of these, and especially we've looked at the hand tinted ones, we've looked at the Red Devils, and we've looked at some of the cyanotypes, the blues. But those will give you ideas for forming your own collection, maybe. It might be your own county or your own town or something, but they're out there and they're fun to find, and it's part of postcard collecting, and it's what we do best. Thanks for being a good audience, and it says, that's all, folks. Ah! That's it.
Thank you very much. Al, does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask? So remember to unmute yourself.
Well,
I enjoyed it very much.
oh,
Great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
I did also. Those fire images are really scary. And I mean, that redness really enhanced the ferocity of the fires.
Yeah, I agree.
And
Al, I have to fess up. That
Yes.
card that you said Debbie and I sent you, I had nothing to do with it. She found it. She sent it. If you're waiting on me to send you stuff, I don't know. You know, she's the one that looks for stuff.
Well, she does a good job, and thank you.
I liked your enthusiasm.
Oh, hi, darling. That's Debbie Wilson. And yeah, there's Dolores.
A question from Rochester, New York.
Yes.
You can hear me.
Yes, sir.
At that time in photography, had film and cameras produced evolved to the point where you could take more action shots, so to speak. There was motion there without blurring. Was
True.
that, in
True.
terms of the cards you collect, was that more the case at that time, or was there still the idea of the subject had to be still because of the way that you had to effectively take the photograph, expose the negative, and then develop it?
Yeah. I really, truthfully, don't know for sure. I think some of those where people are seated in front of a fire or a fake fireplace, they're kind of motionless. But you're right. You don't see the. But in that fire scene there in McPherson, Kansas, all of those people, they were. There should have been a little bit of motion there. I'll have to look to make sure. But that's an interesting point. I just hadn't thought about that before. I don't know.
Thank you.
Towards the end of Abraham Lincoln's life, in fact, several days before he died, there were two photographs taken of him in the Matthew Brady studio, not necessarily by Matthew Brady, but one of them is extremely famous, and it's in focus. He was able to hold still, and he looks completely worn out. He looks like really he's very ill. The other photograph is even more moving because he is a little out of focus because he moved. And in one sense, it's a more successful picture because it looks like a man whose life that he's really worn out. He doesn't have many years left in him just from being out of focus. But they had things to hold your neck.
Yeah.
And chairs that would hold you very still.
Well, that's interesting to think about, and thank goodness for Kodak and all of the wonderful advertising that they did. I mean, big ads in National Geographic. I can remember looking at old ones, and at the front and at the back, they would have good ads. And
Well, the cameras that they used when Lincoln was around are those ones with the big box cameras. The guy put his head underneath the cloth.
A view camera.
Yeah. Whereas most of the ones for the postcard people were small Kodaks that were invented after that. And some of them even had a place where you could write on them, write on the film.
identify it.
To identify it, right.
Sure.
So they definitely were different process.
Yeah.
I was surprised that this Carissa from Maryland.
Sure.
I was surprised that the picture of the fires, like the one on there was nobody there. I will imagine that would be hard to take a picture of a fire. There is nobody around running to try to put it out one way or the other, even with buckets or something.
I think that's mostly because the intensity of the light of the fire, the film wasn't sensitive enough to pick up the details in the shadows because it was reading the intensity of the light. And so the only other shapes you get are the solid ones. And so there could very well be many people there, but you would only get the two intensities, the darkness and the bright light of the fire. So the film just wouldn't have the capacity to pick up the details in the shadows.
Well, for sure they were there in McPherson, Kansas at that ice company. I mean, all of those guys, it was a big audience for sure.
That's a great picture.
Yeah. Any other comments?
Very entertaining. It was wonderful. Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You're very kind.
And maybe Michael would know an answer question because his background's photography. Kodak might have made dyes. I know some other companies did. One company comes to mind, and I could be wrong about this, but I think it was called Peerless. And they made dyes which penetrated the emulsion, the silver nitrate emulsion of the paper on one side. And you would see it on the other side, which is just straight paper.
Oh,
But Peerless, for some reason, is a name that enters my mind. And the other thing Kodak did make, and other companies made, were these, I think they're called vignette shapes. And photographers would use them when they were printing to get like the keyhole look,
uh-huh.
and you would move it to get it out of focus. And so the image coming through the picture would stay in focus, but the perimeter of the picture would be blank, but the edging would be whatever you wanted it to make. You could have it
Oh,
hold still and it would be a perfect shape, or you could move it and it would be fuzzy and
yeah.
focus.
Kind of tricks of the trade.
No, exactly.
Last,
Go ahead, Kay.
last Tuesday night at auction, there was a journal that a photographer had written, and he had all kinds of notes saying what different colors, or if there were streaks in it, what he did. I so badly wanted to bid on it, and I have no idea where it disappeared. It was gone by the time I realized it was not on the table any longer. But it was a treasure trove because it was his notes that told all these different things.
Oh,
I still
interesting.
hope it will show somewhere. But that would have been such a good thing to find
Sure,
and
sure.
keep.
Well, thanks, Hal. It was great.
Well, thank you for coming. It's wonderful to have all my buddies.
Yes, Hal, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Good.
Oh,
Thank you,
you're
Hal.
welcome.
Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank
You
you. I just
bet.
want to let people know about our upcoming meeting, which will be on Monday, May 4th. And we're going to have a presentation about Coney Island postcards.